guys, welcome back to my channel. For those of you new here, my name is Donna, and for those of you not new, thank you so much for continuing to come back and support my channel. I appreciate all of you so very much. Today we're doing the next installment in Palette Roulette series, in which I let an app choose a palette for me. I utilize it throughout the week, and then I come back to you, talk to you about the palette, and choose a new palette. Today's palette is the NYX Ultimate Brights. This is a palette that I picked up because of a friend of mine who is on the YouTube platform here. She also posts on Instagram. Her name is Veronica XOXO, and this is a palette that she used to use all the time. She creates very intricate artwork all over her face and her chest, and she used to use this palette all the time, which is why I picked it up. It looked amazing on her. She was able to get, you know, some really creative looks. I guess I just at that moment in time didn't really look at things like pigmentation to really solidify within me what kind of palettes I was purchasing, because I just assumed everybody had, when I purchased this, I guess I just assumed everybody would have, you know, I don't know what I assumed, but this ain't it. With that being said, let's start here. This is the NYX Ultimate Brights Palette. It is just a plastic container. You can see through it. I do appreciate that about it. It is 16 colorful shades. There isn't a mirror in this. Obviously, this is what the front of the packaging looks like, and this is what the this is what the back of the packaging looks like. The back of the packaging doesn't really say much. You can lift it here to get like more detailed ingredient list. I'm sure. I don't lift it. I don't care to take that off, but this one is the Brights palette. It does have 16 shades in it. These are the shades that it has in it, and it is just your basic rainbow palette. The back of this does say that there are eyeshadows and pressed pigments in this palette. There are 13 eyeshadows at 0.02 ounces per pan, and then there are 3 pressed pigments at 0.02 ounces per pan, and there's a total of 0.46 ounces of product in this palette. So 0.02 ounces of product in each pan is not that much. Honestly, it's about half the size of actually less than half the size of a single pan of, say, ColourPop. This did have a 4.2 star rating on Ulta Beauty and a 4.5 star rating on the NYX website, but the Pride version of this has a 2.3 star rating, I think, on NYX Cosmetics, and I think that that is more appropriate for this palette. The reason why I say that is because this palette on both Ulta and NYX is lumped up into all of the Ultimate shadow palettes that they have, that scheme of palettes. So I'm not sure if that 4.2 and 4.5 really is justifiable for just this one palette, as there are like 6 different Ultimate palettes that you can get. There's Ultimate Brights, there's Naturals, there's Dark Mattes or something like that. I can't remember. Anyways, there's a lot of different ones. That Phoenix was another one that kind of spoke to me, but I won't be purchasing it after reviewing this palette. Now, I'm not saying that this palette doesn't have a purpose. I definitely think it does. It is a colorful palette. I believe that this would be great for a new into color makeup enthusiast, but I don't think it would be great for a makeup enthusiast who has had a rainbow palette from just about any other brand out there, because it just lacks the pigmentation that you will find in even a Morphe palette. And Morphe, I give shit to all the time, but they have some pretty crazy pigmentation in their palettes. 9 times out of 10, they're inconsistent with their formula, but 9 times out of 10, the pigmentation is there. I just don't feel like it is with this palette. Yes, I did do this eye look with this palette, but this yellow is not from this palette, because I can't get these yellows or this green to show up on my skin for poop. So there are, according to the website, 16 high performance eyeshadows in here with a vivid mix of velvety rich textures. And the 4 textures they state this palette has are mattes, shimmers, satins, and metallics. This by no means has a shimmer or a metallic in it. By no means. I do think that it maybe has a couple of satins, but every single one of these shadows performs like a dry, chalky matte. There are some mattes in here that have glitter in them, and I'm not sure if that's what they mean by shimmer, but those glitters don't show up on your eye. They don't appear in your eye look at all. So for them to call them a shimmer is stretching it quite a bit, because just because it has glitter doesn't make it a shimmer. Just because it has glitter doesn't make it a metallic. It actually has to perform in that fashion as well, and none of these do. Not one of them. This one has some glitter in it. I think this one might be a satin. This one has some glitter in it. I mean, okay. There's one texture. Basically what I'm telling you is there's one texture in this palette, and it's matte. You can't get any kind of shimmeriness or metalliciness in this palette if you tried real hard. They are, like I said, super dry, super chalky. There's a lot of powder in the pan, but I will say that I didn't notice any kind of fallout on my face, which I appreciate from this palette, especially because it is a super colorful eyeshadow palette, right? You guys know that when I do these, I look through not only the star rating, but some of the top comments and some of the like lower star ranking comments to see what the brand does to the consumer base to really address the problems that the consumers are finding with this palette. And a lot of the 1-star ratings really spoke to the same things that I just spoke to. It lacks pigmentation. The longevity just isn't there, which I'll get into in a minute. The longevity just isn't there. Like there's no pigmentation. These are bright, vibrant colors, but they're not bright, vibrant colors. And on every single 1-star rating that said that that was their complaint, the only retort that NYX had was use an eyeshadow primer. Well, how do you know they weren't using an eyeshadow primer? How do you know they weren't? And why would that be your go-to phrase when somebody says they lack pigmentation? How about looking at your formula and trying to figure out what it is that lacks pigmentation? That was also the response that they had to somebody who said that there was not 4 different formulations in this eyeshadow palette. Your primer is not going to make a matte look shimmer. Your primer is not going to make a satin look metallic. That is not going to do it for you. Your primer might help with the pigmentation piece, but only so far. I will tell you that this palette definitely works better over the top of a primer. It blends a whole lot easier over the top of a primer. But if you want any kind of pigmentation, you have to go over that primer with a white eyeshadow base as well, and then you're gonna get this for pigmentation. Like this top shade here, and I didn't dilute it at all, is this red. That's not pigmented. And I put a white base down on top of my primer. This like blue shade here is this blue, and then this blue packed on top of it. And because it wasn't dark enough, I also packed on this green because I needed some color in there. So not red, not the blue I wanted it to be. And this yellow is a shade from Sydney Grace that I have, and it is a shimmer. And I wanted a shimmer on my lid, which is fine. I have no problems digging into another palette to get, you know, a color that I want if I know that it performs better than the one that I'm using. The under eye shade is an eyeliner. It's not even a shade in here because I tried to put this underneath my eye and it just did not show up on my pale AF skin. So like I feel like I am just like so heated in this conversation. I feel like I wasn't really irritated. I mean, I was irritated with the palette. I didn't enjoy using it at all. It didn't scream, hey, come work with me. I actually did a get ready with me that we'll post on my channel in early September with this palette. And I talk about using this palette in that video, and you cannot blend these colors. If you blend these colors, they will blend away. They will also be patchy. They're so patchy, they blend away to nothing. I don't know really what to say. The longevity for this palette is approximately 4 hours, and that is with a primer before fading. This has been on my eye for about 2 hours now. This has been on my eye for about 2 hours now, and I do have to tell you, this pink or red that's actually a pink on the upper portion of my eye was a lot more distinguished prior to that point, and it's only been 2 hours. So it's just not good. I have nothing good to say about this palette. Nothing good to say about this palette. Yeah. I think it's a good palette to have around for those higher pigmented rainbow shadows that you have, to utilize it to blend them out. I think that that might be a good reason to have it around, and because it's got, 16 different shades in it. But I used every single shade in here, and they're just not fantastic, and they are a wee bit patchy. So if you're going to utilize it for, just lightly dusting on a colorful eyeshadow, I think that this is your jam. But if you're going to use it for any other reason, for any kind of, maybe I got a bum palette, because Veronica's seem to work really well, but it's not necessarily the oldest palette in my collection, and it has a 24-hour shelf, or 24-hour, has a 24-month shelf life, so it should be perfectly fine right now to perform the way it should. But maybe I imagined that it performed better for her. Some good things about this palette is it would be good for somebody who is just jumping into color and doesn't really want that like high performing color payoff. It's also cruelty free, and it also had 0 fallout. So those are some good things. The bad things are, like I said, it's patchy. It blends fine into each other, but they're patchy shadows. They don't last very long. Yeah, I don't want to keep beating a dead horse. I only got a few eye looks out of this, including this one, because it just didn't perform the way I wanted it to, or the way I anticipated it. That 4.2 star rating and 4.5 star rating, I think, are probably a bit high. 4.2 I would agree with more. I would even go as far as to say I would probably myself personally rate it like a 3.2, if that. It does a decent job, I guess. It just doesn't do. This would be good for my 8-year-old daughter to play with color. That's what this would be good for, and that is probably where this palette will go. This is an $18 palette by NYX, and I didn't pay that for it, and I can't say I would ever suggest anybody pay that for it. If you could get it, even half off might be too much. Man, so horrible. I like NYX. I like a lot of products from NYX, but this is the second NYX eyeshadow palette I think I've had in my collection that I absolutely did not like at all. And I maybe just don't get along with NYX eyeshadows, and that's okay. Makeup is subjective, and it's different for everybody. Everybody's got an opinion, right? So there's that. I think I've probably got all of the, 3 eye looks that I had for you guys in here, including this one today. When I say also that they're dry in the pan, they are really dry in the pan. These are the first 4 shades in the palette. I don't know if you guys can see the sheer powderiness of those, but also these 2 oranges here look the exact same on the eye. But one looks like super bright and one looks like pumpkin orange, but they look the exact same on the eye. I tried to use the brighter of the two, and it actually comes out more coral in an eye look. These don't really have any staining, so that's good. I'm not gonna put these on my arms, my hands, because I forgot to bring a towel to wipe off with in here. This is the second row here, so the purple pink row, and you can see these two look the exact same, and on an eye look they perform pretty much the same as well. I have to say that this one was a really pretty color, one of my favorites in the palette to use. I really wanted that purple to be beautiful, and it just wasn't. So this is what the palette looks like while you're like filtering through it. See how it's a wee bit powdery. There's a lot of kick up in the pan, but it doesn't transfer onto your eye that way. This is the third row. There are all the blues and those two greens. There's a lot of variance in this row. I feel like this is a really the most variant of the rows. There's a lot of different color speculations here. These two look very similar on the eye, but I did use one to deepen up the other, so I know it does have a lot deeper properties in it that you are able to see in an eye look. So, all right, this is the last row in that palette, and I have to be honest, these two yellows on the ends and this green here are not great. Like I said, this one here is supposed to be what's on my under eye, and it just didn't work. You guys can see the powderiness of those shadows on my finger. This yellow here was worthless. I can't even for the life of me fathom why it's in there. Do you see how dull and pastel that looks when it looks like this in the palette? Like, I just think that they could work harder, especially since they are on the higher end of what drugstore costs is. I know my Machinist palette by them was like a $30 palette, which I didn't entirely understand at that time, but this is a palette that I'm going to give to my daughter, and that palette I actually kept. Even though I didn't love it, I actually kept it because it did have some really pretty textures in it. This one just doesn't. I don't just want to keep beating a dead horse. It's not a great palette. I will give it to my daughter. I don't even feel comfortable selling it because it just doesn't perform very well. So I'm going to give it to my daughter, and we're going to pick a new palette. So to pick a new palette, I do use an app called the Decide Now app, and I did pick it up in my Play Store. I do have a Samsung Note 9, so I am on an Android system, but I do know that they also have these decision wheels in the iOS system. So you just pick up any kind of like Wheel of Fortune type app, put all of your information that you want it to decide on into this wheel, and then you spin it. I do put our new palettes in when I have hauled them with you guys. I also take the palettes out as we use them, and to spin it we just hit that button. This is brand new palette. This is a brand new palette to my collection. You guys maybe saw this in a haul that I did earlier this month, actually my July haul, and I am gonna go get it, and I will be right back. All right, guys, this is the palette that we have for this week. This is the Uma Beauty Allure palette. It is, well, Black Magic, I guess. I don't know. I can't decide whether it's called Black Magic or Allure because it says Black Magic here, but it says Allure on the back, so I'm not really sure. I think it's the Allure palette because that's what it says here too. So this is what the front of the palette looks like. It's very like evil looking and whatnot. I'm really excited to use this because I've never tried this brand before, so this is going to be my first time trying this brand. And this particular palette called to me on so many levels. It reminds me kind of the ABH Subculture palette. I am so excited to try this. So this is the palette that we have for next week, and I hope that you are interested in coming over and watching me go through this one. I promise you they're not all as negative as this one was. Hopefully you guys liked this video, and if you did, hopefully you're considering giving it a big thumbs up. It really does help our channels out here, as insignificant as that is. It really does help. I also hope that you liked it, or me, enough that you're considering subscribing to my channel before you go. If you do that, please don't forget to hit that notification bell so that you're notified every single time I upload a video. I do upload content 3 to 4 times a week, depending on the week, and I wouldn't want you to miss anything. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. I hope to see you next week in our palette roulette video. And as always, please stay safe out there. Please wear your mask, because we're not going to get out of this unless we do. Please love each other, but love each other from afar. And until next time, bye guys.